Guys, we're going to get a little bit meta today, and we're also going to use everyone's favorite super scientific source for football numbers and stuff. But there's a good reason that we're going to do this, and quite simply, the reason is because everyone is smarter than Brett Veach. Now, obviously, I'm being facetious, but we're also getting meta today because this is going to be a video on an article. This is going to be a video on a collection article on an article about an article. This is sourced from the Arrowhead Pride Arrow Headlines feature on Arrowhead Pride. The commentary is drawn from Arrowhead Addict about an article from ESPN, and somewhere along the line, the title, "Why One NFL Analyst Doesn't Completely Agree with the Chiefs Keeping Chris Jones," was appended to this. So we're going to do a little bit of reading here and then get into some analysis and opinion. Quote, "The team recommitted to Jones with a new 5-year, $158.75 million contract. Jones has certainly earned it. He finished first or second in pass rush win rate among defensive tackles in each of the past 4 seasons. But this was a huge contract for a player who turns 30 in July. While it starts with $60 million fully guaranteed, $35 million more is guaranteed for 2026 if he is on the roster in 2025, per ESPN roster management. Welder argues that Jones entering his age 30 season and getting this much money guaranteed is a risky move even for a player as talented as Jones. This was always the debate with Jones, as he's definitely closer to the end of his career than the beginning of it. But the Chiefs brass obviously felt that he was a key part of this team, and the fans mostly agreed. Now, one thing that is definitely worth pulling into play and commenting on here is that Chris Jones, yes, is approaching 30 years of age, is 30 years of age, will be playing his 30 years of age season, but if you go back and you look at Chris Jones through the years, Chris Jones has really taken the Tom Brady route for health and wellness development, I would say. Chris Jones is clearly more physical, is clearly in better shape, and is clearly more muscular than he was early in his career. If you go back to his days in college or that infamous 40-yard dash, he was a big guy, but he was not a particularly vascular guy. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm just going to leave it there. I shouldn't have done it. Anyway, he is really taking care of himself the more he gets into his career, and that is showing. And it's showing on the field, and it's showing in the fact that he is a more consistent player later in his career than he was earlier in his career as well. Now, here's what we're going to do. I've compiled some numbers from a super scientific source for NFL accuracy and pure football knowledge, that being Madden 24. Now, look, no, don't get mad at me. I am not a gamer. I do not claim this as the be-all, end-all, but it is important for conversations like this to have some place to start. So I got the top 10 ratings of defensive tackles, and then I got the first defensive tackle that rates in the 70s. And if you're sort of familiar, I haven't played a video game since like 2012, I think. So I'm not, all there with the lingo. But when you start getting into the 70 rated players with Madden, they're players that you can kind of trade in and out, right? They're commodities. They're not really players that you have to depend on for roster building because you can always pick one up in free agency. Probably you can get one maybe even the middle or late rounds of the draft, right? So the first 70-ish rated player, first 79 rated player, I picked that player. And then each team has 2 defensive tackles. There's 32 teams in the NFL, meaning that there are 64 starting defensive tackles. Thereabouts, right? So there's teams that play 3-4. Oftentimes, however, you're not playing a defensive end at the defensive end spot in a 3-4 defense. So there's about 64 of these guys starting in the NFL. So I went ahead and pulled the 64th overall players rating as well. Now, it will not shock you what we're about to see. What might be a little bit shocking is the fact that it might not be exaggerated enough when we really start to look at things. The number 1 rated defensive tackle right now in Madden 24, as per their website, is Chris Jones with a 97 overall rating. Obviously, again, not super scientific, but these are people who are spending time trying to figure this out and make it at least playable for their audience. The next rated player is 2 points below him, so he has no one next door to him. But there's a couple people on the block. Dexter Lawrence at a 95 overall, then Quinnen Williams at a 94 overall, then Vita Vea at a 90 overall. There are 4 total players in the 90s. Now, it's a little bit surprising to me that Chris Jones is a 97, finds himself a 97. 99 is what is known as the perfect player. There's no one that rates 100 in Madden, at least from when I used to play. Here's the question here. Do you consider Dexter Lawrence to be 2 100ths worse a player than Chris Jones? I don't. I don't think Dexter Lawrence is that good compared to Chris Jones. And we get it in at least the sack numbers. Last year, Chris Jones had 10.5, Dexter Lawrence 4.5. Last year, Chris Jones had 10.5 sacks, Quinnen Williams 5.5. These are the players closest to him. Then it drops 4 points to Vita Vea at a 90 overall. We have talked a lot on this channel about how defensive tackle, you can find a big guy. You can find all sorts of guys to play defensive tackle in the NFL, and maybe they'll even not embarrass your defense. But to find a superstar at defensive tackle is extremely difficult. The closest player in the NFL to Chris Jones, according to Madden, is Dexter Lawrence, who is 2 points away. 3 players down this list. You have a 90 rated Vita Vea, who's not Chris Jones. 4 players down this list, you have Jonathan Allen at 89. DJ Reader at 87. DeForest Buckner at 86. Michael Pierce at 85, Grover Stewart at 84, Javon Hargrave also at 84. So, the top 10, the number 9 player is 13 points worse than Chris Jones. The number 9 player, that's how precipitous is the drop-off at defensive tackle. To go just 8 spots away, you're looking at a player 13 points worse. Now, that is not where this conversation ends. The first player in the 70s, you only have to go down to 19. You only have to go to number 19, Daquan Jones, to find a player that is rated 79. Meaning, essentially, probably he's pretty good for you, but you could swap him out for another player and not find too many problems popping up on your defense. However, if the Kansas City Chiefs were to have not re-signed Chris Jones and were to have spent the money instead on Javon Hargrave, a player still in the top 10, you're dropping 13 points. Now, I talked about the 64-ish starting defensive tackles in the NFL. Number 64, Solomon Thomas, rated 71. 45 points later, 45 points later, or 45 spots later, you were looking at a player that is still a 71 rated player. There's all sorts of big guys in the NFL that can probably play defensive tackle and not embarrass your team on Sunday. There are very few players in the NFL, Chris Jones, that can make an actual impact on Sunday. Was Chris Jones worth the money? I don't know. Do you want Solomon Thomas starting on your defense rated a 71 overall? It's going to be more affordable. Not all that much more affordable. Now, obviously, this is not scientific. Obviously, there are holes and flaws in this argument. You have to have some place to start with arguments like this. And I think this makes as good a point as any because, especially at defensive tackle, most of the things you're going to be getting into, most of the stats that are going to show differences between guys, pass rush, win rate, etc., they're not going to be the surface level tackles for loss, sacks, arguments. But where you can find a difference, for example, in sacks total, that's a pretty big deal. And here we have, obviously, Chris Jones separating himself from the rest of the pack. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do on the channel, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button to stick around for more Kansas City Chiefs-based content, because the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, and I hope to have you back for the next one.